on upstate New York and Clifton Park, Schenectady County, Albany County, Saratoga County areas. And it really just depends on how well the town is doing and how well the market is doing in any particular town or city. If the resale is really good and the market's hot, and if it's a town like Clifton Park, they're going to do a start of tax foreclosure the first time you're delinquent. Whereas in a city like Schenectady, where there are literally hundreds of tax foreclosed properties, the towns have stopped doing tax foreclosures because they don't want to own the property. So it's an interesting phenomenon of, because I have people ask me all the time, like, how long can I go? And again, there really is no general, the law states that they can foreclose after the first delinquency, but that doesn't mean they will.
Anecdotally, hi Tatha, Scott.
Hi.
I know municipalities, I won't mention them, that just do not do it. It's a city, and they just don't want to start doing, like you say. And I guess in this instance, if a property is worth lots and lots of money, like $1 million or $2 million, and there's, $250,000 or $300,000, they know they're going to get paid one day when someone dies or sells. So they are really not in a rush. Maybe they, in other cases, there's a trustee of a local municipality who says they just don't want to do it.
Right.
And
they don't want to be in the business of owning property. So they just, like you said,
I don't think the public knows that. Be dangerous if the public knew that. I'm not telling them.
What are your thoughts, John?
Well, it depends on what in upstate, it's a lot of the counties are doing the lien enforcement, and in Schoharie or Schenectady, they may still be operating under what's called Article 10, which is a different type of proceeding. Down here, we're Article 11, so it's by law, it's a 24-month foreclosure process with the option, the local option of extending that. And what Rockland County did was they extended it to 36 months because they figured if they gave people an extra 12 months, it would help them recover if they had a hardship and so forth. But yeah, when they don't enforce the liens, as hard as it may be, it sets a precedence for the rest of that municipality to not pay, which can basically crumble a municipality.
That could be very dangerous.
Financially, absolutely. And it's why property taxes have such a onerous penalty program. There's interest, there's penalties. It's like getting caught up in a cyclone when you are late. And it's meant to be that way, unfortunately, to hold that anvil over your head to say you do need to pay it because that's how the municipality runs for the health, welfare, and safety of that area.
I want to ask Tatha a question. Tatha, in your transactions, have you seen either clients that prefer to pay their own taxes, or do you see that banks, I think there's a disclosure within the loan package where they say they kind of caution the borrower that they are giving them a break by not requiring the escrow? Have you seen the incidence of those two things?
And now I'm seeing very few closings where the buyer has the option. I don't know if it's just because of the nature of the loans in this area with not a lot of money down, but most borrowers do not have the choice. They're forced to escrow their taxes.
Right.
Is that right?
Well, the rule is
no.
No one has a choice. The bank always has the right. In instances where people said, I whatever is their preference, maybe they own a pizza place or they get paid like salespeople, they don't have a regular biweekly paycheck. The bank has the right, and they let them know they're waiving that right in this instance. And I even had a transaction once where a lawyer wanted a document. I don't know what he wanted a document that said the bank wasn't taking it, but they gave the document that says he was kind of asking for something in reverse. I don't remember, but the fact is the bank has the right, and the people. I've even seen, Tatha, if you've seen this, the interest rate be 0.25% worse based on a no escrow loan.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in the last couple of years, but that used to be pretty common, where they would give them an interest rate break if they did escrow. Again, I think most banks are requiring, if you're not putting at least 20% down, they're requiring escrows, and we just don't see a lot of 20% down loans in this area anyway, VA, FHA, USDA. So it's not an option to not escrow. Ironically, I had a closing today where they were putting 20% down, and they had the option to not have escrow, but the buyer elected to have it. It did not change their rate, but they didn't want to have to worry about it, so they just chose to have the escrow.
Well, Tabitha, wouldn't you advise that they do that anyway? Isn't that the
Absolutely.
safer choice?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, I escrow myself when I don't, I have a loan ratio where I don't have to, but I just do it. It's just, I think in general it's easier for people to just include it in the monthly payment and not have a big lump sum due, twice a year. And we all know that if we set money aside for something, we usually end up spending it on something else with the idea that we're going to replenish it, and somehow it just never happens.
I don't do that.
So-
Hi.
No, definitely not
Tabitha,
you.
so John brought up an interesting point. I want you to hear this. That although, yes, escrowing might be a good step in the ease and convenience of paying your taxes, what was your point? That you want to say that
It puts the burden on
it puts the burden, right, I apologize. It flipped the burden where if the tax was not paid, funny, I just was spacing it. If the tax wasn't paid, what happens? Then you have a defense?
If it's an escrowed loan, the servicing company has the obligation to make that payment timely, and if they don't, then the interest and penalties is on them, not the homeowner. Homeowner's job is to
Absolutely.
pay the escrow, and it does make it a much more safer for the homeowner. And I've seen escrow companies try to push that back onto the taxpayer, and we fight back on them and say, pursuant to law, it's triple damages if you want to push this. And they usually pay it pretty quickly.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so it's a nice opportunity to get the easy and convenience and shift the burden, so you really have a clear head when it comes to this. You just got to write those 12 checks a year. That's it.
Right.
That's right.
And one question I want to ask John, which people always say, my taxes keep going up, my taxes keep going up. Why and what's reasonable? I mean, if you buy a house today, maybe not in Westchester, but in our general metro area, what's reasonable?
Or anywhere for that matter.
Or anywhere. Okay, so Ohio. I mean, why don't they stay the same?
It really depends on what's going on in their local market, and it's part of a buyer's responsibilities to see, how is this government running? Are they conservative with the way they spend the money? Are they expanding services, which is going to increase the taxes? Is the school district performing? Are they hurting? We had a circumstance in Rockland County where Murat Power Plant filed a grievance. It lasted for 12 years. They went bankrupt. It cost all the municipalities involved $275 million to settle it. A Cape Cod house that was, say, 1,500 square feet was paying $3,000. The next year was paying $12,000.
Wow.
So you can imagine what that did to the values in that area and the people as well. But it's really something that it's that unknown that people buy into when they buy into a community is, how are they spending our money?
So let's talk about that. We know schools are definitely a big topic for that.
Mm-hmm.
If there needs to be a new school built or something going on with the school system, what else would happen that would change the taxes? Where else is the money going?
So a lot of it goes. We have big police departments that, like we have a 160-man police department in one town. They service the mall, one of the biggest malls in America. They have another mall that's big.
Mm-hmm.
Their manpower is stretched. Even with that, they do make a commensurate salary to all the other departments in the area. But when you look at those malls and those ratables, the sales tax that's being generated, which is what those townships would be hoping they would get, it goes to the county, and the town only gets a small piece of it. So while they're maintaining the security for these large ratables, they're not getting the benefit of the income that they're producing as commensurate as they should. So that is a burden on them. The unfunded mandates are a big one, and that comes from the state passing laws where the county needs to provide services, whether it's social services or what have you, and that becomes a local burden, a local tax, and eats up a big part of our property tax, which was always meant to be a local tax, but the state found a way to siphon off some of that up to the state.
I want to ask Victoria a question indirectly for the consumer. Victoria, with your insight with real estate brokers, real estate firms, just the business itself, John mentioned a point where the buyers, as part of their due diligence, should have an idea of what's going on in the house or even the community they buy. What role do realtors play in that? Can realtors just keep their head up in the sky and not know anything and keep the burden, or can they in any way facilitate? And do they facilitate? I mean, what's that role?
Well,
do they
they
appreciate
should.
that role?
They absolutely should, and I know John will
They should,
agree with
do
me.
they?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they do not always do that, but they should, and that is one of the reasons why you really want to be very selective in who you're choosing to represent you as your realtor.
And that's something that you think we're talking to consumers, they should expect. Look, I never bought a house, lived in an apartment, we saved up, first-time buyers, millennials.
Right.
Maybe it's not on the Google.com. I mean, can someone
Well,
with
you
experience-
mentioned something earlier where maybe it was a senior that lived there prior, and now somebody like a millennial is coming in and they're looking at a different tax rate. Well, that realtor should know that, and they should be double checking. They should be cross-referencing everything.
And
that
we've
they're
heard
doing.
many times where there's what I like to call like the old-fashioned sticker shock, where they're looking at it's one thing and it's clearly another, and the realtor is there. I mean, I think the realtors, that's one of the steps, one of the check boxes to be made by a consumer to say, does my realtor know any possible tax consequences or the tax situation? I mean,
Right. Well, a good realtor, someone who has a good reputation, someone who has experience, does know how to do that. And again, that's the reason why you really want to be very selective in who you're choosing.
I agree. Have you come in contact with that issue at all, John, where the realtor gets involved and is really an appropriate conduit to the consumer?
I think not so much in them coming out and watching what's going on with the municipality, but a good broker who, like you were saying, knows their market, knows the areas where they transact, and they know where the trends are in the spending of their governments, and
Right.
that they're representing. They are the expert in that area, and they should know all aspects.
But,
Absolutely, and without even having to cross-reference, a good broker would know it, looking at the number and saying, well, that doesn't seem right. There's probably a reason for that, and then they can go ahead and do it. But just like he said, it would stand out
It
to
could,
someone
it should.
who knows
But
their
you know,
market.
from the listing side, it's a pretty, I would say, very normal to expect the listing broker to get a good handle on that tax, right? As
They
far as
absolutely should.
disclosure and entry into MLS. But I think you'll agree with me that buyers do not hold their brokers to that standard.
Well, buyers are not familiar with what questions are really needed at that moment. And that's why, again, I'm just going to keep saying the same thing over and over again, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but it is
Repeat yourself,
really
yeah.
very important on who you select as
That's a question
the
I-
broker
that
to represent
I think
you.
they really should say, because listen, look how much and look how long that consequence. When you
Absolutely.
long forgot your realtor's name, you'll be paying increased taxes.
Yeah, and it
Exactly
goes even further than taxes. I mean, they should know the local market. They should know what's going on around them. For instance, if there is going to be a new school that is in the works, that buyer may not know anything about that. But the local realtor should. They should know what's going on in that community,
Mhm.
and that there is talk of this,
That's
and
one
that
of
maybe
the-
there were permits already pulled for this, and that will affect the taxes later on.
Yeah. If nothing else, I think we've alerted consumers to be on the lookout for for tax increases, and they always. I mean, this is, I know, one thing that lenders are really worried about. When they underwrite a loan, they want to make sure that they're not underwriting the buyer's capability of purchasing with enhanced star Ma and Pa Kettle, who are not paying anywhere near the appropriate amount.
Yeah, and looking at just what you were saying on the infrastructure, Orange County, New York was a bargain years ago. And then when the mass flooding of people moving up there, it was a bargain until they had to build new schools and
Uh-huh.
new infrastructure and sewer districts.
Did that happen to you, Victoria?
Yes,
And
it
then,
did.
and then the taxes go up
Yeah.
commensurate.
But of course, I was aware of it. I chose where I wanted to live because of the new school that was coming
Right.
Mhm.
in. And I was very familiar with the school district, and I knew exactly what was going on. But somebody else may not have been, and could have been very, very surprised, after moving in, and then the tax change.
I bet you a lot of your neighbors were. I mean, people
I'm
come
sure
from
they were.
Manhattan, paying a rent, no clue, no
I'm sure they were.
appreciation for that issue.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and like you said, with Orange County, it was even more than schools. You know, there's so many other things that were going on there with the growth explosion. I mean, for a while, Orange County was the fastest growing county in all of New York State.
Right.
All right.
That would make sense.
So before we end our show today, I just wanted to go over some myths and misunderstandings that you had mentioned. If there's anything that you want to talk about before we say goodbye.
Probably the big one that I've always gotten was, if I file a grievance on my taxes with the assessor, they're going to raise my taxes. And in New York, you can file as often as you want, no matter what you're assessed at, and the assessor cannot, under any circumstance, change your assessment. They cannot raise it. So you have no fear of filing your grievance, and it is something that you should look at least every year or every other year to see that you're fairly assessed without the fear of retribution from an assessor.
Thank you very much for that. That's good information. We want to thank you very much for being here today. You really gave us a lot of insight, a lot of valuable information. So John Noto, how do we reach you if someone wants to get in touch with you?
You can email me at jnotojr@optonline.net. Happy to answer any questions that the listeners may have.
All right, very good. And Scott, thank you for always being here and standing on your feet as always.
I also want to thank John. I mean, I learned one or two things, and I tell you, I think he gave some really pertinent, relevant advice to the people, and they care so much about this issue. And I think this was a real thorough examination and treatment of taxes, and I appreciate it.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Scott, how do we reach you?
You can reach me at sforcino, F-O-R-C-I-N-O, at exitrealtygroup.com.
Awesome. And I am Victoria Rivatanera, your host, and you can reach me at victoriariva.com. I want to thank you for joining us at the Real Estate Revolution. Every Monday, 6 p.m., we are live. And next week, we have Glenn coming, Glenn Asher from Kensington Vanguard, and he will talk to us about title and what title means.
Is an hour going to be enough?
I think so, having the two of you in the room. Thank you very much.
From the Entergy Studios,
You hold that as a surprise for me?
WFAS White Plains, a Cumulus station.
I talked to him today. Did he know?
Yeah, he knows.
He didn't tell me. You guys are conspiring.
No,
Did you tell him don't say? Tell me?
Never.
Because he didn't tell me that. John, thank you.
Yeah,
Great job.
good.
Good insight. I like that really esoteric information and packaged or presented in a way that, you learned that from your Scott?
Isn't he great?
I do this to my wife.
You're gonna love John.
Yeah, good stuff. I mean, really important. I mean, look, it's such an important thing. Bank stuff's nothing next to this.
Yeah. And I think benefits brokers to have a good
Yeah, I mean, you know
understanding.
what, a lot of times during the show, things come up to me, and that was one where, look, are we still on? We're still on, right?
No, we're done.
We're done? Do you end?